Yeah. All right, is this all good? Can people in the back hear me? Thumbs up. Good. All right. So yeah, let's start with the lecture number one. We're going to be talking about routes today. This is not cool. There we go. So today we'll be talking about the client server model, which is like the backbone of most of like backends you'll see everywhere. Essentially what client server model is number one, we have the client, which is any computer, could be your phone, your laptop, your tablet, and it runs code locally. And what this does is it interacts with the front end of an application. So people taking like the iOS course, the Android course, they will make the front ends, which will interact with our backend, which is the server. And the job of the client is to display the content, and it also handles user interactions like clicking buttons, like user input into like passwords and everything like that. It all happens in the front end. Um, and then the next like component of a back of like the system is a server. So this is also just like a normal computer. Usually it's on the cloud. So like later on in this course, we're going to teach you how to like essentially rent your own server on Google Cloud, which will be really cool. And this is essentially like a computer that runs all the backend code you guys will make. And it handles the data of an application, where to store the data and how to like process data before packaging it and sending it to the front end people. This centralizes access to all the information like of an app, and it also like helps with communicating with like many clients. Yeah. So give you guys a quick example. For example, on YouTube, if you're on YouTube, you have like a lot of videos, a lot of shorts and stuff like that. You wouldn't really want to store all the data on each and every one of the users' like smartphones, right, or iPads or laptops, right? So how do they store that amount of data? They store it in a server. And that one server is like the access point for all clients, like all you guys' phones to like access like YouTube content. So that's how essentially what a server is like. Um, yeah, so a client and server model looks something like this, where you have like a personal device or something accessing the server. And the server is usually like a stack of like a larger computer that holds all the data and can handle a lot of processing. Let's go deeper into the clients and server communication, how they connect to each other, how they transmit information, and yeah, let's go from there. So let's consider Google. So this is something you guys will probably seen in like the URL of your computers when you're accessing like on your web browser. Um, the first thing you'll notice is the HTTP you have in the start. So HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. It's essentially like a set of rules that like governs all the information sharing you have on the web. So most things on the internet will have either HTTP or HTTPS, as you'll see later on. And this defines like the messaging formatting and transmission standards. So it's standardized across all like the clients and servers. And this is also used everywhere, as you've probably seen. And if we move on, we have this is the domain game. So www.google.com, that's the domain name. And just a quick note, the domain name is not a server. So google.com is not the name of the server. The name of the server is actually the IP address, which is something you'll see as a bunch of like numbers or characters. That is essentially the name or like the code of the server. So google.com in this case is actually just a nickname for the server. So I'll show you later on, but this needs to be translated into an IP address before you can actually access google.com. So this is essentially how the networking works. So on the top left, that's your client, that's your device. If you want to search up google.com, you're going to go through the most bottom like arrow right here. And you're going to ask the DNS, which is a domain name server, where is google.com? And on the bottom right, you'll see like the domain name server will have a sort of table where it maps the nickname like Spotify.com, Google.com to their IP address. So what the DNS will do is it receives your request, it looks up where Google.com is, and it'll send you back this IP address. So like you can see here in this arrow, it says Google.com is at this IP address. And then your computer, the client, will then look for Google.com at that address. So when you're like searching google.com or like Spotify or something like that, you're actually going to the DNS first, waiting for a response, and then it will like find the actual location of the website. So yeah, this is just a simple overview of the what's happening in the background between the client and the server. Moving on. Next we have requests. So requests are things initiated by the client. It's essentially a network call over the internet, and it uses the URL to indicate where it's like asking or requesting information. It has a couple things. It has methods to indicate like the operation's purpose. We'll talk about a bit more about that later. It's essentially like uh, it says like what the client wants from the server. It could be like you want to get information, you want to change information, you want to delete something. It could be a bunch of different methods that we'll talk about later. But the second thing we have is a body. So a body is essentially a package of information that the client is sending to the server in a request. And here's where you can like send data. So for example, if I want to create like a Spotify account, I'll send them a username and a password. And that information will be stored in the body to be sent over to the server. And moving on, we have the request URL. So this is like the one I said just now. It indicates the request destination, also called an endpoint. We'll work a lot with endpoints in this course. Essentially, it defines a specific route path to hit. So think of route as like functions. So if you ever seen a URL like google.com/ blah blah blah, that blah 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 is actually the endpoint, and that allows you to like pick a function you want to do when you're actually requesting to the server. And you can actually integrate data into the URL. So like just now I said, you can put most of the data inside the body of the request, but you can actually also put some of it in the URL. So it's actually information encoded within the path. So if you ever seen like google.com/query/ like a bunch of gibberish, that's also some data that's included inside the URL. And those are also called query parameters. Yep. And now let's talk about the 4 request methods that you'll hear in like almost every software interview, software engineering interview. So the acronym is CRUD, which stands for create, retrieve, update, and delete. So these were the 4 like methods I was talking about earlier. When a user is communicating with a server, there are like 4 main operations that you guys can do. Number 1 is create. For example, I want to create like a new account on YouTube or something like that. Second is retrieve. Retrieving is just simply getting things from the server. For example, like when I refresh my feed on Instagram or YouTube, it gives me a list of items on my feed. That follows the retrieve. And we have the third one is an update. So essentially existing information that you want to change or replace with something else. That's what an update will do. And the fourth is a delete. So deleting is like something like if you want to delete a video you posted on YouTube, that's when you would use something like delete. Moving on, there's actually a different way to like think about this. More technical terms, we have these are the 4 CRUD methods actually. It's dealing with information transmission, retrieval, revision, and removal. So it's creation, retrieving, updating, and deleting. It's the same thing. But later on, when you're like debugging your backend and when you're working in Postman, you'll actually be using these 4 keywords. So post stands for like creating. That's how you wanna post something to the backend. Getting is self-explanatory. It's like when you're getting or receiving something from the server. Putting is the same thing as updating. So like revising anything on the server that's already there. And deleting is also self-explanatory. So you just delete something. And there are actually like many more request methods, but for now, we'll stick to these 4. And yeah, RESTful APIs usually typically conforms to these methods. Yeah. And also the slides will be posted. So if you guys are like struggling to keep up, or if I'm going too fast, you guys can just tell me. But yeah, let's move on. We have the request body. This is essentially the thing I was talking about just now, where you can send information from the client to the server. And in this case, like if I'm trying to make an account or something, I can send a username and a password. And this is usually transmitted in a standardized format. In this class, we'll be using JSON, but it can also be transmitted in something like HTML code or something like that. But in this class, we'll be using JSON. And a JSON looks exactly like the thing in red over there. So it consists of like curly braces, and then it has similar like a Python dictionary where you have the keys, which are like usernames, and you have the values, which are like Josh and like my password over there. That's not my real password, by the way. But yeah. So that's how the body will look. So you can imagine like if you want to send like your email, you want to send information about like anything really. You want to like if you like something on Instagram, for example, it could send a post request, like when you liked it or like how long it took you like it and stuff like that. So this is where most of the information is transmitted when you're sending a request. And this is not only the piece of data that's attached to the request, like I said just now, you can also have data inside the URL. So as like queries. So there are 2 main ones, the ones inside the URL and the ones in the request body. And the request body is the one that people normally use because this is where you can, like, as you can see, you can attach as many things as you like on the request body. Yeah, so now let's look at some example requests. So bringing back the Google example. So in this case, you see the get in bold right here. We're just saying that this is going to be a get request. We're going to receive something from Google. And then you can see the Google domain again. So this is, again, this is not the IP address. This has to be sent to the DNS for us to get the IP address before we can actually like send it to their server. And here you can see after the slash, those are the routes. So this is essentially like the function that you will like query from Google. So you're telling Google, I want to search. I don't want to do anything else. I just want to search. And on the most right, you see the Q equals query. Those are the query parameters. And it's in the format like key1 equals value2. So in this case, Q is the key and query is the value. And yeah, that's other than body, that's the second way to send data, as you can see. So yeah, if you guys search in Google right now, this is probably what you'll get. And now you should know most of what that thing in the URL means. Any questions about this? Great. Okay, let's move on. This is the second type, creation. So this is a post request sent to google.com/login. So as you can see, the route is /login, which means that's going to Google and saying, I want to call the function that does the login. So just now, the get request, it sent it to the route that does /search, and that will search something. This time it'll be for logging in. And I'm also attaching this body over here. So this is the same thing as this now. This is a request body in JSON format. It's the same thing. And also remember that JSON format has to be in double quotes. Unlike Python, where you can use like single or double quotes, JSON, please remember to use only double quotes. Because that's just how the formatting is. Like that's the rule for JSON. Yep. And once we send a request to the server, we're going to get a response back from the server to the client. So this is triggered by the client request, and it returns the confirmation that they actually got the request and they actually completed it, or in some cases, if they failed to complete it. So how do we know if the server successfully like did what we wanted to do? Well, they send us response codes. So this is somewhat to abstract at an abstraction level to quickly tell developers what happened from the backend. So it sends meaningful data also in the body, just like request. Actually, wait, this is not response code. So response code is just like a number, like for example, 200 or like 404 not found. Those are request codes. I'll show you in the next slide. But those are just to show you guys, show the client whether or not the request was successfully like completed. The second thing is similar to a request where the user can send a body of information like username and password and stuff like that to the server. They will also send you back a body. So for example, just now when I was talking about the get request to like YouTube or something, when I'm refreshing my feed, I'll send a get request and they will send me back a body full of all the information. So like maybe like images or like the title of this video and stuff like that. So that's how like most of the information is shared is through that body in both request and response. So let's go more into response codes. This is what I was talking about just now. So 200 usually means that the request was successful and it's okay. 404 is something you guys might have seen when you've like accessed like a website that's like not around anymore, or like it's not, or you mistype something in the URL. And usually 500 is an internal server error. So you guys might encounter this later because you guys are creating the backend. When the front end people request something and something goes wrong with your code, you might get a 500 internal server error because there's something wrong with the backend. And I can actually show you guys. I don't know if this should share, but if I click this is an example of a page that's not meant to be there. So this is github.com/this page. Oh, you can't. Wait, you can't, right? Yeah. Sorry if it's a bit too small, but it's github.com/this page definitely does not exist. So you see that github.com is the domain name, and then you have /something. And remember how the slash is just a route or like a function. So in the case that the route does not exist, they give us this page by default. So it's the 404, like this is not the page you are looking for. And this is what you usually see when you like access like a random page that does not exist. So now you guys know what the 404 stands for. Yeah. All right, moving on. So here are some example responses. Like, for example, like the GET request just now, when I sent the GET request to Google with the search query. If it's successful, it will send me a status code of 200. And along with that, it'll send me a body. For example, in this case, the body is again of a JSON format, but it has a count with an integer value of 100 and a result, blah, 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 blah. So this is what a successful like result or like successful response would look like. And this is what a successful post request would look like. So post request, remember, it's creating something. So in this case, I'm creating a new login. I'm sending my username and password in the body, but then the response, I will get a 200 status code, which means it's successful. And then the body, it even has a success equals true to add another layer of like telling me that it's okay. And it will also have some data, for example, like repeating what my username was, or just telling me that your account was successfully created. So these two are the ones you want to see when you make a backend, because that means your backend was like successfully and it's like it works. On the other hand, if it does not work, this is how it will look like. So if you're sending a post request to Google to log in, you might get a 401 status code. That's also an error code. And you will get like a JSON body as well. But in this case, it's success false and the error is some error. Yeah. So a brief summary. We have the client and the server. The client will send a request to the server with or without a JSON body with the information. And then when it gets to the server, the route is triggered, the slash blah, 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 slash login or something like that. That will be triggered. It will trigger a function that the server will handle. It will like calculate, it will process something. That's where the data operation happens. It will process. And then it will return a response back to the client, which will look like that. So any questions so far? Oh, good. Okay. All right. So we will have a demo on Wednesday and a mini demo today. But this is the pre-demo knowledge check. So just to get you guys like set up and everything. So number one is documentation. I hope most of you guys know what documentation is. It's super important for you and others who use your code so they can see what you've written and like quickly extract like what that function is or what that like class is. And it looks something like this in Python. For example, like here, it returns a task with the ID, task ID. We recommend you guys to use this. And actually in some of our assignments, in most of our assignments, you guys will actually be graded on like having comments. So don't forget to like add comments below your routes, below your functions, because we want to see like good code implementation and documentation. However, you also don't want to add like unnecessary comments. For example, like here, like checks if data has been loaded. Of course, this is just a Boolean storing whether or not it's been loaded. So please try to avoid this as well if it's too redundant. But of course, it's mostly subjective. And if you guys like add too much documentation, it's better than having like no documentation. So yeah, keep note on documentation. Yeah, and this is just like, you don't need to have like documentation for this because like this is a stop sign and obviously it's a stop sign. But yeah. Debugging. Okay. So debugging is a process of removing errors from our code. I'm sure most of you have spent like many hours of your life debugging. And in this course, because we're dealing with backend, we'll be using Postman to debug our backend code. And we'll demonstrate it shortly, or I think in the next demo, I think on Wednesday. But essentially, because you're going to deal with a lot of networking, like sending and receiving requests, you're going to need something other than just the command line to debug efficiently. So we'll show you how Postman works later on. Virtual environments. So a virtual environment essentially creates an isolated environment for Python projects. For example, if you're on app dev, you're working on like multiple apps. You want to have like Python 3.8 for this, 3.9 for that project, 3.12 for that project. You kind of need a way to separate those, and we use the virtual environments for that. So virtual environments allow you to contain like packages and like NumPy, like Flask, and libraries of different versions and keep them in their like own separate buckets, essentially. So it's very useful when working on multiple projects. And yeah, like this example said, if you have like Flask version this for like 2.0 for this one and 1.0 for that other one, you kind of want to separate them instead of like uninstalling and installing again. And quick note for this as well, when you're using a virtual environment, you want to activate and deactivate it. I'll show you guys how this works in the mini demo after this, but essentially activating and deactivating is like when you want to go in and use a virtual environment, and when you're done with it, you want to get out. That's basically it. And these are some action items for today, for this week. Please join the ed discussion by Saturday, 11:59. We have the link on the textbook. You see on the left bar, the textbook, I already updated that to bring you to our ed discussion. If you have any questions, you should ask in the ed discussion, or even better, come to office hours, because we have office hours every single day. Yeah, and I think I've added everyone to the CMS. But if you have not, you can either ask us in the ed discussion or send an email to appdevcourses@gmail.com. And yeah, good luck. You all got this.
I also forgot to mention the first assignment will be released next Monday. I
Yeah.
think I mentioned that. And then it'll be the following Monday. So we don't have an assignment this week.
Yep. So no assignment this week. Assignment starts next week. And it's going to be released on Monday and it'll be due on Monday. So you guys will have like a whole week to do like each of the 6 assignments. Yeah. So now let's get into the mini demo where I show you guys a bit more about how backend looks essentially. So part 1 is you have to go to our textbook right here. You can see this. Yeah. So our textbook's chapter 1 routes, which is what we talked about today. We'll have the pre-class to-dos. And here it asks you to download Postman, which we'll use later on. And it'll have installing the Python version. It'll also have this demo starter code, which I will walk through right now. So if you guys want to follow along, I think this is a pretty easy demo to follow along if you have everything set up. But if you can't, don't worry. We can help you after class or in office hours as well. So assuming you've downloaded the source.zip, it's going to be somewhere like in here. So I got this downloaded in my downloads folder and I unzipped it already. So yeah, we're also going to teach you guys a bit of some terminal commands while we go on. So I'll just show some right now. So if I want to open this in VS Code right now, does anyone know how I do it without clicking on VS Code, like on the, like here, like clicking on the taskbar? Does anyone know how to open VS Code from like the terminal, for example? Yeah. Code dot, exactly. So you want to throw them an egg? Let's throw them an egg.
Yeah, let's go. So in this class, we're gonna have some eggs with secret gifts inside if you get questions right.
With the,
So
with
I
the
also got
spirit
my
of
aim.
these.
Also, does anyone have nut allergies? Okay.
All right.
You? It's not like, how bad is it? Okay.
Not bad. Okay.
You too?
Okay.
So we'll know for you guys.
Cool. Nice catch.
Nice
All right,
catch.
nice. All right. So like he said, code dot can open VS Code, but essentially what I want to do is I want to copy the address, like where this is located in my file system. And then I go to, in my case, PowerShell, but most of you guys, I'm sure, use Macs. Let me just make this bigger. There you go.
People also do most of the like main demos on my computer, which is a Mac. So
Yeah.
if you guys mostly have Macs, then yeah, that'll be good.
Ignore that command. That was just me deactivating content because I see that like bracket base. That was just something I had on. But yeah, to clear your code and like to like make sure your command line is clear, just type clear and press enter. That will clear everything. That's one command. You have pwd. Pwd, it prints the working directory. Pwd, print working directory. And right now, that's my path. I'm in C/user/JoshD. I can clear again. And then we have ls. ls, what it does is it lists all the files and folders in your directory. So if I type ls right now, it's going to show a bunch of my files. So let me actually like cd. So cd is change directory. So if you cd, for example, to the link I copied just now from my file explorer, if I want to change directory to this, it will allow me to, and I enter and see now my directory is like right here. So that's one command. And now I can pwd, so print working directory, enter. Yeah, I'm not P, sorry, it was ls. There you go. So when you download the source.zip, it shouldn't have app2.py. That's coming up in a bit. It should have app.py and requirements. And you should be able to see it if you do ls inside that source folder. Yeah. Also, another like handy trick is to press the up and down keys to go back to the previous commands and like so forth. So for example, if I press up right now, it's going to give me ls like that. If I press up again, it's going to give me pwd. If I press down, it's going to give me back to ls. So I can essentially like scroll through my previous commands by going up and down. That's just a shortcut if you guys don't want to like retype stuff or like copy and paste in the command line. Yeah, and now let's do code dot. So now I'm inside my directory where I got my files. I can do code dot, and that will open up VS Code for me. So I click enter. There it is. Is it showing? Yeah, it is. There you go.
I don't know if you want to talk about setting up code dot.
Oh,
It's fine. I think it's on the website. If you don't, if code dot doesn't work for you, you have to set it up in VS Code. I think it's on our website as well. So just
Yeah.
check there.
all right. Moving on. So, yeah, question? Oh yeah, that is true. Is it this one?
Room might go dark. I'm kind of.
You
I was
got
kind
that
of
one?
lucky, bro. First one I clicked.
Can you get that one?
I'll try. Oh, my bad, guys.
Nice. Okay, that's better. Sorry. All right. So when you download the source file that we gave you, you have two files, app.py and app2.py, no, app.py and requirements.txt. I'll just first let's make a virtual environment. So here, let me deactivate. Just ignore this command. This was like for my computer. Okay. So the first thing we want to do is we want to create a virtual environment. So that space where you want to work work on this project. So you isolate the rest of your files on your computer, no, like the rest of the packages on your computer from the virtual environment. So to do that, you're going to want to do Python 3 -m, like make venv, which is virtual environment. And then you can name it anything you want. And like conventionally, we just name it venv as well. So this will create a virtual environment called venv in my directory. So if I click enter, it creates a folder right here. There. It creates a folder right here. And you can see all the stuff I put in there. And then how do we get into the virtual environment? So to get into the virtual environment, I believe on Mac, let me write it out.
It's dot space
venv
/bin/bin/activate.
That's what it is on Mac. But on Windows is a bit different. So this is also on the textbook, actually. On the routes page, you can actually find it there. But let me just use the Windows one for now. That's actually bin. I'm sorry. Right. So now you see the green venv, like the ven on the left. That indicates that I'm already inside my virtual environment and I'm ready to start working. So before that, let me just clear. Yep.
Okay.
It's fine. Because it's a tiny terminal.
Yeah.
I kind of want to keep it.
Also, if you guys are confused about like this terminal versus the other one, it's the same thing, just VS Code has it built in here.
Yeah.
Automatically.
This is the same terminal. This is built in. Exactly. So now let's do the first thing, which is to install our libraries. So we included this file called requirements.txt. And this is all of the requirements, like click, and all of the versions. So 8.1.3, for example. If you want to know more about these like libraries, you can actually click on the link here. It'll bring you to all the documentation. But for now, it's safe to just gloss over this and just install it. So to do that, you want to do pip 3, like pip version 3, install. -r requirements, and then you name the file that you have all your requirements in. So in this case, it's requirements.txt. And that's how you install all your like the requirements here into inside your virtual environment. So I click enter, and it'll do a lot of collecting. So it collects all the files and it'll install it. So as you can see here, it installed it, and it successfully installed all of these packages. And for now, you guys can just ignore these. You can ignore the like the new pip release and everything like that. Yeah, so that's how now we have all the packages installed in our virtual environment. And now let me do clear because it's kind of annoying. Now let's look at the app.py file. I'll close this for now. So if we go from the first line, from Flask import Flask, obviously that imports Flask. In this case, Flask, where's the definition of Flask? Flask is here. I don't want to get it wrong about what, like the definition of it. No, like. Yeah, so the official documentation, like the definition of Flask, is a Python-based web framework that helps developers build web applications. So our backend in this course will actually be a web application, as you will see later on. So this is one of the major package we'll be using in this class. So take note of that. The third line right here is initializing a new Flask app called app, like app right here. And we're giving it __name __ to tell Flask what's the name of the module we're running. So after that, we will have our first route. So like I said just now in like the Google/login, Google/ like blah, blah, blah. This will be your route. So this is a Python decorator. A decorator, essentially, it's like it goes on top of this function. If you've seen Python function before, it goes on top and it just tells Flask like what this will be. So here I could actually put like login, something like that. This is how the Google one would have worked. It would have a decorator with /login to tell like that's where the location of this function is at. For now, let's just keep it as nothing. And then below that, we have the function that will be run when a client calls the route on our server. So this just returns hello world. And if you see on line 11 to 12 over here, this line, it checks if the name of the, if the name equals main. So it checks whether or not our web app is being ran like from main. So
directly or if someone else is calling.
So similar to the main function in Java, it checks whether the script is being run directly or imported as elsewhere. So sometimes like you can also import app.py into another file. So this is just checking to see if we're running app.py directly from the terminal or like running it directly as that file. So this one is sort of like a minor detail, but this is also important. Under that, if we're running it directly, we want to run the app.run with the host 0.0.0.0. This sets the URL or the domain where the server is accessible. And we have the port 5000. Usually it's typically set to 5000 or 8000, but in this course, we want to try and stick to 5000. Actually, like the past assignments and lectures, we might have used 5000 or 8000 interchangeably. And sometimes when the ports are different, like your backend or like our testing script may not run properly. So we're trying to standardize it. So you guys can try 8000. There's nothing wrong with that, but we want to like make sure everyone is like more standardized and just uses 5000 for this course. And this parameter like specifies which network port on your computer where the server listens. And it helps differentiate this process from other processes like running on your computer. And then setting debug equals true. That just allows for like all the logs. If anything went wrong, all the logs will be like in the terminal. It will just like show you the error logs directly in the terminal. So you can quickly like identify issues. Yeah. So like how I talked about the port 5000. On Mac, actually, port 5000 is used by AirPlay receiver. So if you guys have AirPlay on, sometimes running your app will clash with that. And there's an easy fix for this. All you got to do is turn off your AirPlay for a moment or change it to port 8000. But we would recommend just sticking with 5000 because most of our test scripts will be using the port 5000. If you have any issues with this, feel free to come to office hours. We can easily like help you debug this as well. But the way to turn it off in Mac is to go to System Preferences and then Sharing, and then you'll be able to turn off AirPlay Receiver, because that's also the default port they actually run their like system on, or like their process on. Yeah. So now let's actually try and run this web app. So I'm just gonna save it. I don't know why it's unsaved. But to run this, all you have to do is do Python 3 and then the name of the file, which is app.py. And what you'll see when I run this is it actually starts a web server running on all addresses 000 as we've put the host here. And then it runs on these two URLs. So HTTP 127.0.0.1. This one, if I click on this one is actually the local version of my web app. So as you can see right here, you can see hello world, which is what I printed. So this web app is running live on my computer right now. And if I change, like, for example, if I change hello world to like hello, hello, or something like that, and I save it, Flask will automatically update that, as you can see below. So it restarts the app. And then if I reload this page on my web browser, the same URL, it will be hello, hello. So Flask in this case is like in the development mode where it like updates as soon as you save it. So this is really helpful for like debugging purposes and other things like that. And over here, you can actually see the second URL right here. So 10.48.93.90. This is actually running on, this is actually my computer's IP address. So my computer's address on this room's network, or like whoever's connected to this router. So we can try a pretty cool experiment here. I have app2.py. It's exactly the same file as this app.py. However, I change the return. So there's like a secret message there. And one way to, okay, how do we stop our web app? You can just press Control-C to close it. And you can't see that. I bet. How do we show this? There you go. So Control-C, as you can see, it closes it. It stops the web app from running. And if I go back to the page, it should no longer work. Yep, it just does not work. Yeah, this site cannot be reached. But yeah, as I was saying, app2.py has the same code, but like a different like return. So if I run this, app.py, app2.py, it should create the same thing, but with a different message. And what I want you guys to do is go to the second URL, and the first person who like answers the question on that URL will get an egg. All right, are you ready, guys? So what you have to do is like just now, go to this URL, and you'll see like my new backend live. Okay, ready?
They're already locked in.
3, 2, 1. Flask is done. And okay, this is the new URLs right here.
What's your favorite ice cream flavor?
You gotta answer it though.
What's your
is
favorite
it?
ice cream flavor?
Cookies and cream.
Cookies and cream. Okay, that's a good choice. Sure. There's a lot of people there.
You got it.
Okay, nice catch. Right. Can we get one more? Can someone else who else like manage to access that?
Show your screen. No cheating.
You got it?
Mm.
You got it?
Yeah.
What's your favorite ice cream flavor?
Mango sorbet.
You want an egg? That was a bad talk. Okay.
Okay, I closed it. There's a lot of get requests. See all these get requests? These are all, wait, this is favicon. So this is actually getting the icon, but like all these get requests with the status code 200, these are actually your guys's laptops. In this case, you guys are the client. You are accessing my backend. I'm the server. And it is showing me in the logs that you guys successfully connected with the code of 200. So you can see how like what we've learned today like actually shows up in practice as well. For the 404, you can kind of ignore that. That's just getting like I think this was getting some sort of icon, which failed because I didn't really put an icon there maybe. But yeah, other than that, I don't know what that was. Okay, that's clear. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So that's pretty much the end of today's lecture and mini demo. Now let's go on to the Kahoot after I deactivate. So don't forget to deactivate. And when I just type deactivate, it gets me out of the virtual environment. So let's move on to the Kahoot for today. I think I can stop recording, right?
Yeah.
Stop.